Hey there, PCC. Mary Cristelli with PCC Wellness and Recreation and another virtual workshop. I'm super pumped about today's workshop because we're actually going to talk about some outdoor recreation, which is one of my favorite things to do in my personal time. I love being out in the mountains, out riding my bike, rock climbing, that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to share some of this information with you today. I've got my teammate Lisa here. She's running the camera, looking like she's got some super steady hands there, so I'm really pumped. We are here in the rec center, like you can see the equipment and stuff here, so kind of cool. A little shameless plug for coming down. If you haven't been here, pop in and check things out. But we're going to talk about some outdoor recreation. So when we're thinking about rec and going out into the mountains, on the trails, out to the lake or the river, whatever that might be that you're looking at doing for this summer, there are some things we want to keep in mind. So one of the things that I really love about Pueblo is our proximity. We're very close to a lot of recreation. We've got stuff right here in town. I mean, we've got the kayak park right in the middle of the community, right, running through downtown. We've got the mountain park just, 25-30 minutes away by drive out in Beulah. We've got the reservoir. We've just got so much, and it's really awesome and such a cool thing to live in a community that's so close to outdoor recreation. A few things we want to think about when we are heading out, whether we're going hiking, mountain biking, rock climbing, kayaking, boating, whatever that might be, is that there are some like, they call them the 7 principles of leave no trace, just some guidelines that we want to recreate by. So again, it's called the 7 principles of leave no trace, or LNT. And those are 1, to plan and prepare. So this is super important because we want to make sure that we know what the weather's going to be like, that we've got all of the equipment and gear that we're going to need for where we're going, that if we're going on a hike or we're going on some sort of trail, that we kind of know what the terrain might be like, that it's going to be within our level of comfortability to hike or recreate on, that we want to make sure someone knows where we're going. So it's really important to start by making a plan and preparing and getting all the equipment that you're going to need for that. The second piece is that if we're going to be camping, hiking, or biking, is that we want to make sure that we're traveling and camping on durable surfaces. And this is a safety aspect. We want to make sure that we're doing some things that are super safe for ourselves, and that we're also being mindful and respectful of the wilderness and the surrounding area. Especially for camping, we don't want to be on super loose ground or anything like that. We want it to be nice and stable, and that we're on established trails and stuff. We don't want to be cutting our own trails, so going on those existing hard surfaces. The third piece is to dispose of your waste properly. So we call it pack it in, pack it out. So whatever you bring out into the outdoors with you, you want to make sure you're bringing all of that back. So making sure that you're not dropping trash or leaving any sort of garbage just lying around out in the river, on the lake, on the trails. So any sort of, if it's food trash or anything like that, anything you bring in with you, being really mindful that you're bringing it back out. A big one, it's number 4, is leave it where you found it. So a lot of times we'll see some really cool things out in the mountains or in the wilderness that we think are really beautiful, and we might be like, yeah, I want to take that home with me. I want to add it to I want to put it somewhere in my house. And we want to preserve the environment and leave things out there, and just think of it, leave it where you found it, as like you came upon that thing because the person who came before you left it and you got to enjoy it. So leaving it there so that the people who come after you can also see that really cool or beautiful thing that you're seeing yourself. So leaving things where you find them. Number 5 is to reduce any sort of campfire impact, or using fire safety when you're out there. So using existing fire rings, fully extinguishing it, checking for fire bans in the areas that you're recreating, and making sure that if there's any sort of fire ban that you're not in violation of that could be a safety thing. Number 6 is to respect wildlife. So I like to think of it as I am in their home and I'm a guest there, and so it's important that when we're there, we're doing things that support and nurture their living environment. So if you see wildlife, just leaving them be, not trying to agitate. If you want to take pictures, that's really great, but being really respectful of them, and kind of when you're in that planning and preparation phase of your trip, researching what kind of wildlife is out there, and if there are some risks of some wildlife that you might be a little frightened of, learning how to safely interact with them so that you stay safe and they stay safe. The last principle of LNT, or leave no trace, is to be considerate of others. So when you're out camping and if you have music playing, keeping that at a volume that is just mostly in your space so that you're not disrupting other people. If you're having conversations out on the trail, keeping your voice at a lower volume so that others out there can enjoy the peace if that's what they're out there for, and just being considerate of other people. So those are the 7 principles of LNT, and those we can apply to any sort of outdoor trip that we're taking, whether it's going on a hike, backpacking, camping, rock climbing, out at the reservoir doing any sort of that kind of thing, tubing down the river. So just those are the principles we want to keep in mind when we're out in the mountains. Now I want to get into some more specifics. So some of the types of recreation that we have around Pueblo are water sports, and I don't have some of the safety gear that one might need for water sports and things like that. But I do want to talk about it. Whether you're out on the reservoir doing some boating, kayaking, paddleboarding, on the river doing some tubing, whatever that might be, just being mindful of your and the folks who are with you swimming abilities, and making sure that anyone who struggles with swimming, or definitely small children, have a life jacket. They're also called personal flotation devices, or PFDs. So making sure that there's at least enough for everyone on board, but certainly those folks who struggle with swimming or aren't as confident or comfortable with it, and then small children have something like that. Always bringing one of those with you, even if you feel like, I've got this, I'm gonna be fine. We just never know when we might get real tuckered out, and if you get, you dump over, hate to have some sort of a tragic accident. Checking any sort of signage for safety, hazards, or like just kind of guidelines and rules that folks want you to follow when you're out on rivers, lakes, and things like that. Being aware of others out in the environment who are using that. And if you've never been on the river before, or you're not super comfortable with that, just being aware of your own limitations and respecting the space that you're in. And if you start to get that feeling of like, I'm feeling a little unsafe, I don't know about this, it's absolutely okay to bail out. We'd rather you hop off the river and maybe walk back to your car, or wait for someone to come and pick you up, than to end up in a really, really dangerous, potentially life-threatening situation. If you're out and you notice that someone is struggling, contact 911. I've seen that our Pueblo City Fire is doing a lot of their swiftwater rescue training right now. So those folks are super trained to handle that kind of stuff. So if you're noticing somebody is in a dire situation, they're needing help, contacting local emergency services and giving them as much information as possible, and keeping yourself out of danger and waiting for the trained individuals to arrive to help them out. So that's just some basic water stuff we want to toss out there, because we do have a lot of access to water sports, which is really, really exciting. Another thing we've got near here is tons of biking trails. And so actually here in the rec, we're going to have these available at the front desk. We've got these trail maps of all the biking trails that are in the Pueblo community, including out in Pueblo West. And so if you are interested in this, I do believe there is a version of it online, but if you're like, oh no, I want to have that with me, I want to put it in my backpack when I'm out biking, pop by the rec center and pick one of these up. We'll have them available here at the front desk. We've got lots, so please make use of that. I love this map because you can see quite a bit of what we have going on. When you are out biking, there are a few things that I want to recommend that you, if you're able to, that you keep in a small backpack or even in a little bag with you, so that you, if something happens, you're able to take care of yourself or your bike. And so I'm going to have Lisa come in and we're just going to show you a few items here. So I always like to bring an extra tire tube just in case I get a flat and I gotta change that out and repair it. I bring or change the tire out, and so I was bringing an extra tire tube with me. This is a bike tire pump. I got this was like $9 or something, and it's just a little handheld one. I've seen some folks carry the large ones. Whatever works best for you, that's totally fine. I like to keep one of these on hand just in case, again, I gotta fix a flat. I have a little repair kit here, so it's got, we went over some bike maintenance a couple months ago, but it's got these little tire tube patches here, so if it's super small and I know that I'm going to be headed back home after I encounter something like this, I'll just patch it real quick and then take care of the actual tube replacement when I get home. These I bring with me to help me remove the tire from the rim. Not necessary, but definitely are helpful to have. I always keep a multi-tool, so it's got a bunch of different little like Allen wrench type pieces, as well as a flat head and a Phillips head, just in case I need it. Gotta, you know, fix a tire or tighten something on the bike. I want to make sure I have this. And then, of course, super duper important, first aid. I always bring this. This has got a few band-aids, some chapstick, and a little bit of tape. And I always bring this with me because you never know, you might fall and get some bumps or some scrapes or anything like that. So I always bring my little tiny first aid kit with me. So those are just a few things that I pop in my backpack, as well as some water and some snacks that I just toss in. I have this, but I've also got another regular backpack that I bring, so you don't need anything fancy. Just your school backpack would totally suffice. You pop a couple of water bottles in there, a few of these things that you feel like you might need, some like granola bars or something, maybe some mixed nuts, and you know, some fruit snacks. I love fruit snacks, so I'm always putting fruit snacks in my bag. So that's for biking. With hiking, we might be gone for the whole day, so there are some other things we want to keep in mind, and we call these the 10 essentials. And these are the 10 things that they've found that folks out in the wilderness need in case something comes up and you get stuck somewhere. So of course the first is, again, this little first aid kit. What I love about this one is it's so tiny, it just fits in everything. I usually just keep this in my backpack, and so it's always there, so I don't ever have to dig around for it. So you want to make sure you have some sort of first aid kit. If you don't have a full-on kit, you know, grabbing some tape and a few band-aids and maybe a little like tube of Neosporin or something like that, and dropping that in a sandwich bag, that's all you need. We're not, you know, performing surgery out on our hikes. This is just in case we fall and scrape and we got to clean it off and stuff. So first aid. A big one is some sort of navigation. So I always bring a compass with me, but you may not have one of those, and that's totally fine. So making sure definitely that you also have a map of the area that you're going. So these are just two areas that I frequently visit. You can see that they are well-worn maps here. And so I just go online, find my trail, print the map off, and then I just fold this up and pop it in my backpack as well. I keep all of these things in one, like you can put it in a quart size or a gallon size Ziploc bag, and then it's all together. So I always bring a map of where I'm going and a compass, but at the very least having a map of where you're going to be, and you're going to find that information when you're doing your planning and your preparation for your trip. Some fire starter. This is just in case you get stuck somewhere and it starts to get real cold and you might need that. Another thing I recommend along with it is bringing some paper. I mean, if all you've got is your map, like that in a dire situation, like you're gonna use what you gotta use, but I usually bring just like a couple of sheets from my planner like 2 days prior that I'm not going to use those anymore. So just a couple of pieces of paper and these are waterproof matches. Some folks, I think maybe even in my first aid kit, yep, in my first aid kit I actually have a lighter, so that will work as well. Some sort of illumination or a light. So I've got a headlamp. I also have like a little handheld, they're all handheld. I've got a little flashlight that sometimes I'll bring as well. And again, this is just in case you get stuck and you're finding yourself hiking back in the dark. You don't necessarily need a headlamp. Again, a flashlight will work just as well. Just something to help light the way or help signal in the dark that you know, if you see somebody that you might need some help. Please check the batteries about a month ago, I went camping, and it was like a last minute planning, which is not something I do. I don't do last minute trips like that very often. I forgot to check the batteries, and the batteries were dead, and I didn't have extra. So always check the batteries before you head out. A pocket knife, or even if you have a multi-tool, you can take that, but I always bring a pocket knife just in case I have to cut something. Of course, some sun protection. Got some SPF, so some sunscreen here, and then some sort of a hat. I always bring a hat with a brim just to keep my face covered, because usually I get pretty sunburned on my nose even if I'm wearing sunscreen. So definitely sunscreen, and then if you have a brimmed hat, something like that. If you notice that you get like extra sensitive to the sun and stuff, and that sunscreen doesn't quite work, then wearing lightweight, light colored layers to help protect your skin. I know here it's super, super hot sometimes in the summer, and it's been pretty toasty lately, and that wearing a long sleeve shirt may sound pretty uncomfortable, but if you do have super sensitive skin and you notice that even that sunscreen isn't enough, then wearing some sort of lightweight material that are like lighter colors so that it doesn't like absorb the heat from the sun. So that's your sun protection. This is shelter. So I've actually had to set up a shelter one time. I got stuck on a hike in the rain, and not just a light rain, we're talking like full on pouring. And so we actually, my friend who I was with, we actually took the footprint of the tent, which is the piece that you can lay down on the ground before you set the tent on it, and we set up a shelter. If you don't have a tent or you don't have that footprint for it, a tarp works just as well. So you can get a tarp, fold that up really small with some string, so some sort of shelter. We've also got extra food. So I always bring, in addition to whatever kind of like snacks and lunch I'm gonna bring if I'm going on a long day hike, I also bring a couple extras just in case, because sometimes you get hungry when you're out there and you may not have enough. So making sure to bring a few extra snacks. Water, always have water. So I use this like hydration bladder here, but you can also use water bottles. And the last piece are some extra clothing. We want to make sure that just in case it gets really cold, we have some extra stuff. So I always bring like a winter hat and then some extra gloves, and I tend to like bring more than I would like, enough for me and potentially one other person, because I want to make sure that everybody's got stuff. So winter hat, extra gloves, and then I bring a rain jacket so that I have that just in case it starts to rain a little bit or a lot, and it also protects from the wind if it starts to get a little bit chilly. So if you're going to head out this summer for any sort of recreation trip, I recommend bringing these 10 things with you. You know, again, we don't have to go out and purchase super, super expensive stuff. We can have some water bottles instead of one of those like hydration bladders. You can just throw some Band-Aids and a little bit of Neosporin into a Ziploc bag, toss that in your backpack. You got a flashlight. You won't need to get a headlamp if you don't have that. Grab a tarp and some extra rope that you've got laying around, and whatever jacket you might have. You know, these are things that I personally don't believe you have to run out to like some sort of sporting goods store and buy a whole bunch of quite expensive and fancy gear to be able to go out in the wilderness. Some of these things we have just laying around, or we might be able to pop over to the dollar store and pick up for real cheap. In fact, this pocket knife I have was $1 at Walmart. So like, and it works just fine. So I hope this information is helpful to you. I think we're super, super fortunate that we live in a community that is so close to so much recreation. And I encourage you to get out and explore. I'm going to pop some links to some local, like the Parks and Rec open spaces and trail sites, so that you can see what we do have available here. Again, if you are wanting to go for walks or biking on the awesome trail systems that we have here in Pueblo, including where we have established bike lanes on the roads within the community, we're going to have these maps available here at the rec center. I also think that there's an online version of that, so I'm going to find that link and we'll put that with this video down below in the description of everything, so that if you see this and you're like, yeah man, I want to check that out, you can click on that and easily get yourself to those sites and see what we have going on here. Thank you so much for tuning in for this particular workshop. I love outdoor activities and I like to share my passion with other people. So I hope this information is helpful. Take such good care of yourself, and I hope you have a really, really awesome summer.